Hey all, and welcome to a new Programming the Net technical tutorial. In this video, we're going to learn how to interact with HTML media elements, and specifically with the video element from JavaScript. And in order to do that, I have downloaded this amazing video from YouTube. It's just a bunch of waves. It goes on like that for 5 minutes, and we're going to work with this video. We're kind of going to learn how to create our own controls, like a play button and a stop button and a volume slider for it. And then we're going to actually adjust the playback speed of the video based on the position of the mouse on the page. So let's get started. I'm going to upload the video to the assets folder in order to have access to it from our website. Let's see, I hope it's not too large for glitch. And while it's uploading, we can actually go ahead and get started in creating our video tag. So I'll just type video, and then okay, great. It's uploaded. If you remember, in order to add videos, we need the source attribute with an src, the source tag nested within the video tag, with an src attribute, which is going to be whatever link glitch gave our video. So I'm going to add it here, and we should start seeing our video element. It's black because the first frame of the video is black, and we don't have any controls on it. We could add the controls for now just to make sure that the video is playing. And there we go, we have the video. Great. I'm actually going to remove the controls because we're going to kind of build our own simple ones. And I'm going to start it muted and autoplay, right, just to see the video kind of playing in there to make sure that it's working. All right, cool. Before we move further, let's also style the video so it kind of takes up the entire page. We want it full screen, so I'm going to give it a class, video waves video, and then I'm going to go inside of our CSS. I'll say waves video, and let's see, let's give it a width of 100%. and the height of 100%, and object fit cover. Let's see if that works. Okay, it doesn't like that. That generally works for images but not for videos, it looks like. In that case, we can just keep it at with 100% and we'll work like that. All right, great. And yeah, I said we should create a play button, a pause button, and then also a volume slider. And in order to do that, we can create two buttons for play and pause. So button, and I'm going to give them an ID from now because we're going to need them in JavaScript. Play button, and I'll call it play button, ID equals stop button, and we'll say stop. And then let's also create a slider for the volume, and for that I will say input type equals range. This is something that we haven't really seen before. It's really just the default HTML slider that we can use. We can give this a few attributes, like the minimum and maximum values for the slider, and also default value to start with. So I'm going to give it a minimum of 0 and the maximum of 100, and then initial value of 0 as well. All right, great. So now that we have our HTML elements, let's actually get into writing some code for them. Let's also give this input an ID, volume slider, and let's give our video an ID as well so we can interact with it from JavaScript. ID equals waves video. All right, great. So I'm going to move into JavaScript and start with our usual window add event listener for DOM content loaded, and then have our callback function which executes once the HTML page has loaded. And let's get our buttons and the inputs, add event listeners to them, and then implement the functionality. So we'll say var play button equals document get element by ID play button. I'm going to copy this over for the stop button. And then one more time for the volume slider. Volume slider. Volume dash slider. Okay, great. And now we should add our event listener. So we can say play button add event listener for click, and then we can create a function called onPlayClick. The same thing for stop button listener click, and then on stop click. And I'm actually going to have to look up the actual events that we need to use for the volume slider, because I haven't used one of these in a while. I have it here. I have the documentation for the input type equals range here. Let's see if we can. Okay, it's not specified here. Input events listener. Okay, so it looks like for changes in input elements, we need to add the inputs, the input event. We'll see in a second if that works. So I'll say volume slider add event listener input, and then on volume change. All right, so let's go ahead and create those three functions. Function on play click, function on stop click, and then function on volume change. And let's add some console log messages and open up our console and make sure we wired everything correctly. So I'll say console.log play, console.log stop, and then console.log volume. All right, great. So I'm going to open up my browser console and clean everything from here. When we click play, we get the play message. When we click stop, we get the stop message. And when we adjust our volume slider, you see the word volume is printed like 54 times. Kind of every small adjustment makes it be printed again. So our function is getting called, which is amazing. So let's start with the play. And in order to do that, I'm actually going to remove the autoplay from the video so we can see what we're doing. Great. And the first thing we want is to get a reference to the HTML element of the video, right? So create a var video element equals document get element by ID waves video, I think is what I called it. Yeah. And then it's really simple. All we need to do is to call the play function on the video element. So we just say video element dot play, and that should start our video. Great, easy as that. The same thing works for audio, right? Like audio and video are very, very similar. If you want to do this with a piece of audio, you just give it an ID and make sure to give the ID to the top audio element rather than the source, and then call the play function from JavaScript. For stop, we can do a very similar thing where we need to get the element and call the stop function. Great, so let's see. I'll hit play and it starts playing, and whenever I hit stop, oh, it's telling us that video element.stop is not a function, in which case maybe I will try pause. Which hopefully is a function. We'll find out in a second. All right, so play and then pause, right? And then play again and pause again. And that seems to be working. So it's super easy, right? So now if you want to kind of build your own custom controls, custom play bar and everything for a piece of video, all you need to do is to kind of create a layout, design your controls, and then add this simple functionality to it. Great, so let's also work with the volume. In order to do that, we need to actually get the number that this slider is representing, right? And remember, our slider is going between 0 and 100, and we're going to give that value to the video. So in order to get the slider's value, we can get the element again, right? The volume slider. We're in a different function now, so we don't have access to the volume slider from our initial function anymore. So I'm going to copy this volume slider equals document get element by ID volume slider. And the way to get its value is by accessing the value attribute on it. So, right, so I'm just going to say console log volume slider.value. And this should really tell us what number the slider is currently representing, right? So we see it's going up to 100 and then coming back to 0. The one thing to notice is that the console prints strings in black, but whenever you have numbers, they're printed in blue, right? And our value is printed in black, which means that we need to convert the string of the number 1 into the actual number 1. And one way we could do that is to create a variable for the actual volume and say use the parse float function, and I will explain that in a second, and then give the volume slider.value as an argument. Alright, so parse float really just takes a string, whatever it is, and turns it into a floating point number. If the conversion fails, then I think it returns null. If the conversion succeeds, it returns our number. So let's also print our volume variable and make sure that everything works. Alright, see, so we have the volume string and then the 10 string and then the 10 number. I mentioned blue earlier. In my console, it's green actually, not blue. So now we have a number. And the reason I turned it into a floating point number rather than an integer number is because the video element, when we want to set its volume, we need to give it a number between 0 and 1, as opposed to a number between 0 and 100. So we need to divide this volume by 100. We could have also given our slider a range from 0 to 1, but yeah, this is just the path that we ended up taking. So we'll create a new variable and we can just say volume remapped equals volume over 100. And I'm going to actually remove all of these console logs, clean things up a little bit. And now we need to get our video element, right? So var video element equals document get element by ID waves video, and we need to set its volume attributes to the volume remapped variable. So just say video element volume equals volume remap. Oh wow, I can't type today. Volume remapped. And hopefully this should make our video work. Let's see. Okay, so we're still not hearing anything, and I think that's because our video is muted. Right, so we have the muted attribute, which overrides the volume. So I'll make sure to remove the muted attribute and try again. So now we're starting at 100% volume. However, as soon as we change the slider, our volume changes, right? And in order to start at a low volume, kind of like the slider is showing us, right? Like the slider is starting at 0. We could initialize the volume of the video here inside of our initial function to be 0 as well. So we can just say var video element equals document get element by ID waves video, and then video element volume equals 0. Right, so as soon as the page loads, our video will start with a volume of 0, just like the slider indicates, and then we can turn it on. Alright, great. We're almost done. I want to show you one more thing before we wrap up, which is kind of hooking the mouse position into the playback speed of the video, which would mean that if our mouse is kind of on the left side of the page, our video should be playing very slowly, right? And if we're on the right side of the page, it should be playing like super quickly, like maybe 3x, 4x the speed. In order to do that, we need to add a mouse move event listener, right? And we could add that to maybe to the video element. So we have to hover on top of the video. So I'll just say video element add event listener mouse move, and then create a function for it on mouse move. And let's create the actual function on mouse move, and in this case we need the event because we need to get the mouse coordinates. And I'm going to print the event to the console so we can figure out how to get the x and the y. We only need the x coordinate, right? We are only working with the left-right axis, so we only need one of them. Alright, so it looks like what we're looking for is the client X, right? So the client X is going from 10 up to 580, and I think if we change the size of the window, our video is set to be height 100%, so our client X is going to be wider, right? So we actually depend on the window size. So let's say var x equals event client X, and what we want is to turn this from a number of pixels into a new playback speed from the video. So we could say that the minimum playback speed on the very left side is going to be 0, and the maximum playback speed on the very right side should be, let's say, 5, right? Like make it play super quickly. So we need to turn this into a number from 0 to 5. In order to do that, we should divide it by the window width, right? Just to get a number between 0 and 1, and then multiply it by 5 to get to our full range. So I'll just do both of those operations within one variable. So I'll say var playback speed equals event client X, oh sorry, X, because we already have a variable for it, divided by window inner width. Remember, inner width gives us the size of the window, and then multiply that by 5. And then we can just get our video element again from HTML. So video element document get element by ID waves video, and we can say video element playback, I think it's playback rate, equals playback speed. Alright, so let's see what we've done. I'll hit play. Right, so let's have some volume too. Whenever I move the mouse to the very right side, the video plays super quickly. And as I move to the left, it starts slowing down, and you can hear the glitches in the sound as well. The sound actually stops playing if it's too slowed down. But yeah, and I think the closer we are to the left side, the slower the video will play. Yeah, I think that's it for this tutorial. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and thank you for listening.